So I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos today, and I was seeing that there's a lot of recommendations for a website called privacy.com. Now, I've seen this same website for many, many years at this point, and I've seen its rise and how people have been continuously using it. And even the other day, I was talking to my buddy about how I was getting annoyed, how I have to constantly put in my address and my information, and how it can get leaked at any moment. And he was like, why don't you just use privacy.com? It's super easy, and I don't see why you wouldn't just use it at this point. And it got me wondering, well, that doesn't make sense, especially on the fact that he was saying that it was free, basically, more or less. I'm like, that doesn't make sense, because if something's free in today's world, well, what ends up happening is it actually costs. So I was like, screw it. You know what? I'm going to take a look, see what this is all about, right? So let me show you what their website says, essentially. On their annual and monthly billing, you can create up to 12 new cards per month. That's merchant locked and single-use cards. It sets spend limits on a transaction, monthly, annual, or total spend basis. Pause and close cards, and you, of course, have a wonderful 3% fee on foreign transactions. Then they recommend you, on the other hand, to also have they create up to 24 cards per month. Category locked cards, card sharing, card notes, API access, and finally the $10, which is create up to 36 cards per month, everywhere cards, 1% cashback on your purchases, no foreign transaction fees. Now, I started looking into it, obviously, because I was quite curious. Now, they claim not to sell your data. That's something that I rather liked quite well. I read their privacy notice, okay? I admit it, I read it. But then something kind of popped my eye, because while I was looking at this, I came across some of these posts. Privacy.com is not private, and they're being dishonest calling themselves that. Now, before we get into the rest of this video, I want you to understand something. Privacy.com is technically private towards the vendors, okay? So if you're gonna use it, then it's not a problem. You don't have to be paranoid, okay? Thumbnails, everything else. That's just how YouTube is. However, it is at the same time not private. And I'm going to go into that here. So essentially, for the TLDR of this specific post, Edison is reminded more or less that there is in fact a private spin mode, but you can see some of his points are actually standing here from their privacy policy, with we share personal information under controlled circumstances only. Third parties who may access data about you to provide you with services. Third parties who may access data about you to perform functions on our behalf. So on their behalf, let's say, for example, a third-party vendor, with financial institutions, processors, payment card associations, other entities that are involved in the payment process. Okay, so that's basically any single bank. With government laws enforcement, where responsibly necessary to protect user public safety or comply with applicable laws. That makes sense. With others, where reasonably necessary to protect the security or integrity of our services or user safety. Kind of weird. In connection with or during the negotiation of any merger, sale of company stock or assets, financing, acquisition, divestiture, or dissolution of all or a portion of our business, or with your consent. Now, two things here. The first one is I find it really weird here. Anything to do about the company stock or assets, or basically being sold at all, and they're going to share my personal information because of that. And the second one is with your consent. How many times have you gone to a website, for example, and you just hit I consent? So with the fact that it just says I consent, it's kind of weird for me. And it says we may share aggregated and anonymized information that does not specifically identify you or any individual user of our services on top of this. So you are essentially having your data being sent, which is kind of weird. I kept going down the rabbit hole of this. Even further, has privacy.com gone too far from 3 years ago? For example, this guy received some transaction denials, but some of these were really interesting right here. For example, Dumpster fire, can't sign up with my debit card. Now account is under review for trying to add my debit card. Bank account connection requires providing a third-party bank login password. That doesn't make much sense. Same here, use the same card for nearly 5 years and suddenly it's getting denied. Called my bank to track down why, and privacy is simply not sending the expiration date for charges. This is not a choice with cards, so your account has been flagged like mine, or they cannot take any cards. My evidence is anecdotal, but I have a very liberal coworker that I turned onto the service not long after I started using it. He's not having issues, and we both live in the same rural town in Texas. And naturally, on top of this as well, there is apparently lots of links between Plaid and other third-party services, essentially. Plaid is absolutely horrible, but this keeps going on. When you're actually reading what people say about this, like for example, if I went even a little bit further, the name is a bit misleading as you don't have any real privacy, but the service works well for what it's meant for. It's also using a good backend as well. I like the service. Once say you don't get any real privacy, there's a limited privacy provided between the merchant and yourself, not the bank, as you can put any address or name payment front of it. But the problem that inevitably keeps happening here, that you keep cycling through, is what about all the connections? What exactly is going on there? What, for example, how do I link a bank? Because it turns out you're not actually linking your bank directly from, say BOA or Wells Fargo or whatever else bank you have in the world to privacy.com. Instead, what they're doing is they're using a third-party vendor essentially to get that connection. And one of them, for example, is Plaid. Now, Plaid is a really interesting one because they love using your data. How we share your data, as permitted by law, we share your data as follows: with the developer of the app, with the financial institutions to enforce any contract with you, any contract, by the way, and to enforce it. Data processors, partners, agents, contractors, and connections for the service they perform for us. We believe in good faith that disclosure is appropriate or required to comply with applicable law. Connection with change in ownership or control of all or part of our businesses, between and among. It keeps going on, by the way. It keeps going on. And so I kept going down the rabbit hole, and I found another one right here. Some people say that they've been using it since 2016, before the KYC rules got crazy. But KYC, what does that mean? Know your customer. So this isn't necessarily a issue with privacy.com, but it really is to do with privacy.com, is that because you're using them, they know everything about you. I mean, people have said before as well, that I think we're going to get down into this, that some people are giving them basically everything short of a blood sample in order to actually prove that they are who they say they are inside their account. It's gotten so ridiculous at the point that you're practically giving them more information than is really necessary for a service to just make sure that you and the vendor essentially have privacy, you know, that you are giving them a fake amount of information or such, rather than say using a fake card or such, or a temporary card, whatever it might be. Now, it keeps going, as much as I hate to say it. It really does, because I have quite a few things. So, for example, right here, you see I've used it primarily as means to prevent credit card fraud from having a major impact. During the pandemic, one of the several small-time payment processors that local restaurants used repeatedly got hacked, resulting in fraudulent charges on one of my credit cards. Got replaced several times in a year. Using privacy, I was able to figure out exactly which one, as each provider can have their own card. But it gets strange though. I tried to use it with several subscription services, but ended up using a credit card instead. The problem is that privacy.com, through Plaid, I think, periodically requests the balance of the linked bank account and won't allow charges later than they think your balance is. Problem is that their connection to the bank seems to be brittle. I often get a "you must reconnect your bank account now" message. While the connection is still such broken, they can't update their balance information. When the connection is working and the balance updates aren't instant or maybe not even daily. It just keeps going down the list. But Then you have, for example, news.combinator.com, and there's this thread. And I know this is a lot of research, but this is essentially what I do. So if you are happy with what I did, please, hit the sub button, leave a comment telling me how good or how horrible I've done in terms of searching them up. Because holy heck, is it a pain in the rear to find information anywhere to do with this. Author here wasn't concerned about privacy.com knowing who's their service, but rather how they choose that information. I found pretty particular interesting information here. For example, recently I've signed up with Paddle, and they opted to verify users' identities with Onfido. So they asked for government ID and a selfie. I've contacted Paddle and refused the selfie because apparently they require you to submit the selfie alongside it. And then we can see over here as well, verifying people with selfies is a degrading and insecure practice, especially when you encounter Onfido during the installation process of a bank app that you already have with an account opened in person at a local branch in the EU. This bank also asks you to create video yourself and submit your speech to configure their mobile banking app. I'm sure the data will be useful for anyone when Onfido eventually gets hacked or just sells your biometric data. And keep in mind, you're using privacy.com as the gateway for all this information. These threads, they're so long that there's only particular bits of information that I can pull out of it. But there was a certain point where the actual operation manager, in regards to their privacy policy, sent a message here, right here, Rachel here, at Lead Operations. We want to clarify data collection. Because there was another post up here in regards to the KYC information on how much they're actually pulling out here. They provide privacy, non-anonymity, payment privacy that is not hiding your identity privacy. Your payments are private. It is not the existence of KYC. It's that the KYC provider is slimy and not privacy respecting. Selling your data to potential bidders is a no-go. And you can see here, for example, that they did in fact try to respond, but it's all the way down. Our goal is to make sure that customer data spends as little time as possible with third-party providers like Onfido. Their general policy is to not save data longer than a year. But, by the way, we tried to state basically that it has to be deleted after 30 days. Privacy is our name, which is about making sure our customers' personal and payment information is kept private from merchants and from fraudsters. So it's never been about yourself. We offer a financial service that comes with legal and regulatory requirements that we have to gather details like address, social security number, and phone number to authenticate users' account. If you know of other KYC providers that have more privacy policies, we're open to exploring. Now, here's the deal at the end of the day. You can use them. It's a great program, or service rather, to be able to get a temporary card. But what you're ending up having happen is you're giving your information to all these third-party merchants, for example, that you never realistically signed up for. Now, the way I see it is privacy.com is essentially a gateway service. You go in, you want to be able to have the temporary cards. You want to be able to have your information off on the internet wiped away, because that's what they advertise. But at the very same time, what you're doing is you're creating such a perfect profile that, by the way, is not federal. It's not run by the government. It's run by a company. You're giving them your SSN, your full name and date, birthday, your actual address, your government documents to prove you are who you say you are, direct access to your bank account. Pretty much every single thing, as per what someone said, except a dropping of your blood, to then get access being able to use these temporary cards. Now, there's been a review from joindeleteme.com, for example, that Laura Mastertouge looked into, which was a pretty interesting one right here. TOSDR notes that the service can delete specific content without notice or reason. Logs are kept for an undefined period of time. Users may provide identifiable information. The service may collect location data, and some personal data may be kept for business interests or legal obligations. It's pretty interesting up here as well. According to privacy's policy, collects government identification, name, email address, phone number, birth date, payment data, transaction data, device data, and data from third parties related related to your government identification number over the past 12 months. But, by the way, it does not sell your data to third parties. Instead, of course, they allow them to have access to it. Now, depending on your definition of privacy, while the cards are great, there's clearly no privacy about you yourself. There was one final post, I believe that was on Graphene OS, that just a bunch of people mentioned a bunch of different alternatives, just so I can state some. Look, Monero exchanges, XMR, apparently there's more Iron Vest. Although when I looked into Iron Vest, some people were saying that it was ridiculous. It looked legit. I haven't tried it or looked into them. MySudo, Pay with the Moon. So apparently this is fairly straightforward, but we can see here from Grouchy Grape, privacy.com is what I've been using for a few years. I agree that it has its issues, but my primary goal using it isn't privacy, but security. If/when they have a data breach, I can change my card and add the new card to the site. Nothing else is affected. This wouldn't be the case if I added the same card to all these different sites, which increases the headache of getting a new card, let alone the attack surface increase. This solution isn't perfect, but fits my current lifestyle. The feature set, privacy.com, is also pretty awesome. If I could find a better replacement, I'd be all over it, but for 99% of my transactions, this is great. So you pick your poison. You either are going to give privacy.com, as well as their third-party vendors, your information, or you're going to give the vendors directly your payment information. I think you have to make the decision, but in my personal opinion, I wouldn't give neither in a perfect world my information, and in this particular case, I guess I'm going to keep looking. So if you have any recommendations in terms of how to avoid either, well, rather both of them, please let me know, because there's no way in hell I want to give all my information to a company that is not the government. So take care, guys, and let me know. Thanks.